We have about 22 enterprise customers, and most of them are using us for high volume roles.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the B2B SaaS podcast. I'm your host, Upendra Verma, and today we have Sunny Saurabh with us. Sunny here is the CEO of a company called Interviewer.ai. Hey, Sunny, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Abindra. Thanks for having me.
Yes, Sunny. So, can you explain, right? So, what your company does and why customers pay you money?
Sure. So we are Interviewer.ai, as you introduced. We are called a smart video recruiter. And basically what that means is we kind of automate the first round of interview for businesses and for universities. And we do it in 3 stages. Basically, we do something called a resume scoring. We do something called a work map skill assessment. And then we record video responses and analyze that for soft skills. So in total, we are able to stack rank hundreds of candidates to allow the recruiter or the hiring manager to shortlist the top 3 to 4 candidates for in-person interview. So there's actually something called a human interview and an AI interview now, and that's the world we are living in.
Yeah. And so, is this first round? Is it completely automated? So, do I sit in front of my computer and do I record a video? Like, do somebody ask questions from the other end? How does that work? I mean,
It's
looks very
completely
interesting.
automated. It's very asynchronous. And to be very honest, initially when we launched in 2018, November of 2018, HR people were not liking it. They're like, no, we prefer in person. And then COVID happened. And then suddenly there was a huge shift where people wanted to, do it from their homes. And then you found a lot of these remote jobs, which are not in your region, not in your time zone. So you're actually working with companies that are 12 hours ahead of you. And suddenly everybody wants to do it in their own sweet time, right? So asynchronous just was the tool that you would use to increase productivity within organizations. And that's where we started taking off.
Got it. And yeah, let's try to understand. I mean, this looks like a horizontal platform that I could imagine everybody in the everybody under the sun using it, right? So I just want to understand your customer base today, so that we could understand where you're focusing on, right? So talk about your customer base, right? How many paid customers do you have on your platform as of today?
So we have, paid would be, we have to kind of qualify that.
Yeah.
But I'll just give you the journey. So initially, we started working with the top universities in Singapore, which is Nanyang Technological University and National University of Singapore, Singapore Institute of Technology, and Temasek Polytechnic. So many of them, right? And what we were doing there was helping students prepare for interviews. And we would basically give them a scorecard. We'll tell them what they're doing well, what they are not doing well. And this was targeted at career services.
Mhm.
So imagine a career services team, which is 5 to 6 people, and you're handling a batch of 600 students. A lot of them come from China or Indonesia or Malaysia. They are not very fluent in English, right? How do you train them for job interviews in Singapore? So that was the first use case, and that's where we got bulk of the universities in Singapore. And then we went to AppSumo marketplace in the US. Just to test the platform, and suddenly in 3 to 4 months, we got like 700 plus customers, and people were paying a one-time fee. So that's where it just took off, right? That was 2 years ago, and we started building features that they were asking for. And then gradually now we have, for example, if you know Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world. So MR Group has built it, the chief architect, right? They are our customers. There's a NASDAQ listed platform like Trade Desk. They are our customers. And we work with a bunch of banks in India.
Yeah. So I could
Axis Bank
see
is
some pretty big logos out there, right? So that's why I want to sort of understand, right? So I mean, how do you go from an AppSumo deal, right, to closing, for example, MR Group, right? So that's what. So let's try to quantify this, right? So can you just help us understand, right? So ignore all of
Yeah,
those one-time customers that you might have used to grow, right? So today, right,
sure.
like how many paid customers, and like give a profile of these customers, right? How big are they in terms of maybe number of seats that they're utilizing, or whatever that metric that you track?
Absolutely. So, if we leave the 700 plus customers that we got from AppSumo, and a bunch of them, I think 200 of them are still using us on a month-on-month basis. We have about 22 enterprise customers, and most of them are using us for high volume roles. So, for example, if you look at the MR use case, they have an event and they're expecting about 200 to 300 candidates come at the event, and they want to capture that information, right? So capturing an information traditionally means I give you my CV, but somebody needs to review those CVs and then interview them and do the phone screening, etc. So we automated that entire thing. We did it with their phone QR code. They could just interview, we could stack rank, and they could hire with just one person. To give you a perspective, that effort, it wasn't 200 or 300 candidates that they estimated. It was more than 2,000 candidates that came. And that would have taken a team of 42 recruiters to kind of screen, right?
Yeah, I could see the value that you talk about, right? I mean, it's mind blowing if you can automate that process, right? That's pretty much clear here, right? So in terms of these customers, right? So like, so for example, you talked about that particular event that MR Group was using. So are they your recurring customer? Would you call them a recurring customer, that they come to you regularly? Do they pay a platform fee? How does that pricing work?
Absolutely. So they initially came for just one-time event, right? Then they used us for a corporate role in March, and then they came back in June. So they are using us for high volume recruitment drives. We are mostly in the 0 to 5 year experience range, where you are trying to either get a number of candidates. The number of candidates are more than 100 applicants per job. That's where we are a good fit. We are not a very good fit if you're hiring, say, a CEO or a VP in an organization where that an executive search firm would do a much better job, right? But having said that, Trade Desk has used us to hire their regional sales directors in India. All of them have 10 plus years of experience. And just look at it from their perspective. They could share profiles with their decision makers in the US and in Singapore, and make very, very quick decisions in hiring. So those have been the use cases. Surprisingly, our way of sales has not been to map the CHRO and sell it to that person. It's been more of the business heads that have been using us. Even the AppSumo customers were CEOs of companies and MDs who cannot hire a recruiter, and they would just work with a weekend. On a Saturday, they would just sit and screen candidates and say, all right, I'm going to hire this person. So that's the primary use case.
Got it. Right. So yeah. So and how big of a deals are we talking about? Right? Across these 20 odd enterprise customers you've got. So how do you track revenue? Do you use your regular metrics like MRR, ARR? Is this a recurring business? Would you call yourself that?
We have just gotten, so hiring is seasonal, right?
Yeah, exactly.
From our perspective, there are two major drives in a year. So we started with monthly, kind of plans. But we changed that. We made it more of an ARR basis. And to your earlier question, it's based on the number of credits and the number of licenses. We started with, say, about $3,000 per annum initially. Now we are upwards of 10x of that. So that's the average deal size. That gives you an idea of the average deal size.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? So now, I want to move on, right? So now I want to understand, right? So how are you closing these enterprise logos, right? So where are you discovering them? Just talk us through that entire journey, right? So where are they discovering you in the first place? And then how are you closing those deals? Just walk us through that journey.
It's so Pendra, it's mostly timing, so we don't have a outbound sales team.
Okay.
Surprisingly, we get it this inbound. Most of them are inbound. So AI interview is a great keyword, and people find us through that. They found us in London. They found us in the US. We have been recommended by the likes of Deloitte to large insurance companies like AIA Insurance that's using us to screen for their these insurance agents, right? These are high churn jobs, right? They are based on a commissions model, and traditionally, if you look at it, it's a very archaic way of hiring. Agents in different areas would recommend somebody, but now we are bringing that objectivity, we are bringing that scale to recruitment, right? So they are finding us.
Okay, so I want to quantify this, right? And because it looks like a wonderful journey here, right? So you're talking about people querying on Google AI interviews. Looks like you're ranking up top. That's one of your channels, and maybe consultants recommending others, right? These are the two channels that I could think of, right? Is most of your inbound traffic coming from these two channels?
These two. So I mean, we tried LinkedIn, we tried Google, we tried Facebook. None of them have worked as well as content marketing. So we do a lot of.
You meant paid ads, right? You tried paid ads.
Paid ads. Yeah. Paid ads haven't really worked for us. especially like I would say I'm ex Google, but I think Google is a very B2C platform. So we'd
Yeah.
get a lot of candidate data, but not really decision makers. Um, and most of the keywords in our space are priced out of the market. So if you are very well funded,
But then
like some
how do
of our,
you go and rank for something like that? I mean, that looks even tougher, right? So
it's luck, or it's just basically the space we are in. We were lucky enough to identify the space early on.
mhm.
So I used to work at LinkedIn, right? And for a role that I would hire, say in Australia or in Hong Kong, there would be about 700 candidates. How do you go through that screening them, right?
Yeah.
And your recruiter is handing you like 5 to 6 resumes that doesn't make sense, right? So how do you go about screening and figuring out who to invite for an interview? Um, and to be honest, we talk a lot about referral and hiring. Like, can you refer something? I think it's a hack.
Mhm.
It's because your primary screening platform, primary recruitment software does not work, and that's why you use referral. Like, hey, do you know somebody? So you kind of cover the culture fit, the soft skills part of things, because somebody knows somebody who might be a good fit. But it's a hack, and I think the basic hiring systems are broken, and that's where we realized that you need to interview. So hiring has always been like,
Yeah.
there is resume submission, and then
So Sunny, I
two to
think
three.
it's very, very clear the value that you're adding to people. Like, I think that's very, very clear, right? So my question is more in the lines of, it's like I'm just excited about your growth journey, right? So I mean,
Sure.
and just like it's really hard to understand. Okay, you closed these 20 enterprise logos because they've discovered you somewhere else, and just is that what you're saying?
They discovered us out of a need, and that
Of
need
course.
came in later. So and we have got customers in Mauritius and other places, right? Rogers is a logistic group. They are a 3 year. I mean, they have renewed it for 3 years now. So and why are they renewing it? Because they understand they are in
Yes,
Mauritius.
yes,
They need to
yes.
hire talent, right?
But
So
but the channel is still, your inbound content marketing that's been working for you, right?
Exactly, and
Yeah.
we raised a very small amount, like 650K, about 4 years ago, and we have
Mhm.
not raised since, right? So something is working.
Yeah.
Can it be put on, steroids and scale to a $100 million company? That's something we need to do in the near future.
Mhm.
But we know something is working. We know, despite the layoffs, our product traction has improved and growing. But it's how do you optimize the system? How do you build something that people want? That's basically what we're focusing on right now.
So Sunny, talk about the sales cycle here, right? So once one of these big logos discover you for a use case, right? So how do you end up closing them? You could just like, how did you close these 20 odd deals? Like, was there any sales team out there trying to make those deals happen? Like, what was that journey like, and how much time did it take you?
It's honestly just one of my co-founders is in charge of. He's a HR expert. He's the one who talks to these customers. So anytime there's an inbound deal coming in, we use HubSpot, and essentially we qualify that, and then he starts the engagement. Um, Typically, it takes about anything from a week to a month to do the pilot. Everybody wants to do a pilot. Nobody's like,
Yeah.
oh, AI interview, let's just plug in and start working, right? There's so many steps to it. There is a compliance aspect. There is is this a responsible AI? There are so many things that we are not talking about here, but people needs to be sure about. So there are a lot of checks. So some of these take up to 6 months,
Mhm.
but a lot of them where it's just one time drive, it closes in about 2 weeks to a month.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense, right? And then, like, what's the plan here, right? So how are you gonna go from whatever number that you are at today to, let's say, 10 million, $15 million, right? What are you gonna invest in, right? So what channel are you thinking of at this point of time?
Channel in terms of where the growth is going to come from, right?
Yes, yes.
Honestly, right, we the times that you would build a huge enterprise team is gone. I think enterprise sales has now become inside sales, if you know
Mhm.
what inside sales,
Yes.
right? Um, so we would build a inside sales team here, in India.
Mhm.
We'd build it in Europe. So we are in talks with certain experts in Amsterdam and London, trying to build a team there. And even in the US, right? When the US says remote, it doesn't mean a global remote. It means a US remote.
Yeah.
So you would build a team probably in an Austin or Nashville, or somewhere where you can kind of cover the entire East Coast, West Coast without hiring a very, very expensive sales team.
Mhm.
Um, that's one small area, and the other two are integration. So we are integrating with, say, Microsoft Teams. So imagine you're on Teams and you're collaborating with your coworkers. You're a small medium sized business, right? You go out of the platform, you get a short list of candidates there out of hundreds and hundreds of candidates. Then you decide, hey, out of these five, these guys are right experience, there's something. Out of these five, let's invite two. So suddenly you've brought down your interview cycle from 5 to 6 rounds to 2 rounds.
Yeah.
So you collaborate, you do that. When you're doing this round, right, there is something now that has become very common. It's called interview fraud. So basically, I'm not confident to answer technical questions, so I will ask my colleague to sit in an interview. So how do you check for interview fraud? So those are some of the solutions that we built, where you can actually see the person who's applied on the side, and you can actually give feedback. You can see what your colleagues have said, and you can just optimize the hiring manager's time. Because sometimes the feedback doesn't come into the platform for weeks, and you've forgotten who you interviewed and what the feedback was, right?
Yeah.
So you can do it on live on Teams when the screen is open. So that's the marriage between asynchronous and synchronous time, right? Like anything that you do synchronously across time zones, across busy schedules, especially when you're working in hybrid and remote roles, right? It requires a lot of effort, and it's very precious time. So you want to split 80% of your time doing asynchronous tasks, and then probably 20% of your time doing synchronous tasks. And that's where we are bringing value in hiring.
Got it. Right. And Sunny, how big is the team today, right? So
I'd be surprised. So we are about 6 people, with about another 6 helping us in different areas like finance and design, etc.
okay.
But a lot of them are from LinkedIn, Google, JP Morgan, a SoftBank back company in Vietnam. So we have an amazing team.
How many people closing all of these deals that you've mentioned so far? How many of them?
One.
It's just one. Okay. It's still founder-led selling that's happening at this point of time.
Yeah. And we are trying to build our sales team, but it would require investment, because we are trying to go after enterprise scale deals, and that requires about 6 to 9 months of sales cycle.
Got it, right? And then what's the vision here, right? So when are you raising your next funding, and what you look like? What's your milestone, right? So how are you thinking about it?
So we're going to be raising a small bridge round for the European, kind of a growth team. That would be within the next 3 to 4 months. We are actually in the process, but then in Series A, we'd be raising by next year, early next year. I would say first half next year, and that would be the real scale, because we think that we have to be in the US, because almost like 45% would be of our customers are in the US. We're not being able to cover that from Singapore. Somebody wants to talk at 4 a.m. We are not available, and we lose those conversations, right? So we know we are missing out, and I think we need to move to that direction, because the scale is there. And even if you're in Singapore, right, one of the challenges that we have seen is that the decisions taken on these software and tools are done in the headquarters, and the headquarters are in the Valley or New York or London, and that's where we need to be. Yeah,
makes sense. All right, Sunny, thanks for taking the time to talk to me. Hope you scale Interviewer to much, much greater heights.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Thanks, Upendra.
Thanks for watching the B2B SaaS podcast channel. I believe that the best way of building SaaS companies is by regularly talking to real founders who are out there building their companies. These founders have gained tons of insights during their journey, and I'm here to bring those to you. So if you want more such stuff, please make sure to subscribe to the channel here.